Today we're talking about how people define and understand nations, and we want to do this because we want to understand different perspectives on nationhood and thus on nationalism. I am going to split this up into two videos, so I'm not just talking forever. But just a brief overview, we're going to take a look at linguistic understanding of nations. We'll take a look at it from an ethnic viewpoint, cultural, religious, geographic, relationship to the land, from a spiritual viewpoint, and from a political viewpoint. One of the most popular ways to try and define a nation is to try and define it linguistically, looking for when people share a language. What language do they speak in Spain? Well, they speak Spanish. And one of the reasons that we know that they are unified is that that language helps to unify them. Remember, we defined a nation as a unified group of people. If you all speak Spanish or German or French or English or Kutchi or Gujarati or Cantonese, that is one way to start looking for nations. Look for groups of people that speak the same language, and it sets them apart from other groups of people. Is it a perfect way? No, there is no perfect way to define a nation. But that's a very common way to think about it, especially because the way that you use language helps to shape worldviews. The words you choose matter, so the words that are available in your vocabulary also matter, and they can change the way that you think. We're well familiar with this linguistic understanding of nation in Canada because that is one of the bases for Quebec's claims of nationhood. Their linguistic understanding of a nation is very strong in Quebec. If you've ever wondered, well, why do they care about the French language so much? Isn't culture just as, if not more important? Well, the language piece, at least in the eyes of many francophones, is one of their defining characteristics of a nation. And Quebec is in many ways a nation within Canada. Could other regions of Canada make claims to that? Potentially. You could make an argument for it. Western Canada certainly does try to, but this is something that's unique and sets Quebec apart from the rest of Canada. Are there English speakers in the province? Absolutely. But there is a part of their unity and identity that is defined by speaking French. And that gives them probably the strongest claim for nationhood within the greater nation state. We could also look at nation in terms of ethnicity. Many nations exist because they come from people who share ethnic characteristics. This can be physical characteristics, body structure, skin color, hair color, eye color. It can be cultural characteristics. It can be linguistic characteristics like we just talked about. But when we think of this in terms of ethnic understanding of nation, we're looking at it not in terms of what those are, but why do they exist? Well, if we're looking at the ethnic understanding, it's because people have come from the same ancestor. Norway is a great example of this. The vast majority of people in Norway are Norwegian because they share common ancestors. They are part of the same population. And there's very few other people who are other Europeans or other non-Europeans in Norway itself. Canada is not like this. At least not if you're looking at Canada and the provinces and the territories. Because Canada doesn't have that same ethnic unification. we don't all come from a common ancestor. In fact, that is one of the ways that we do define ourselves, is that there are lots of people from all over the world in Canada. And that can be its own type of unity, but just understand that it's not an ethnic unity. If you want to take another look at ethnic unity, take a look at Kurdistan. Now, if you go looking for Kurdistan on a map, you're not going to find it, because as a sovereign state, a nation state, it doesn't exist. But the Kurds have argued for a very long time that it should exist because they are a nation. They all inhabit this area that we see highlighted in the Middle East. And they have argued for a very long time that they should be a sovereign, independent nation state because they are already unified by their shared ancestry, so ethnicity in this case, by their shared language, by their shared religion, by their shared culture. So they have advocated for that. We can also look at the cultural understanding of a nation. Culture is simply the shared way of life between people. And it can be that shared culture that is the foundation of a nation too. This is a characteristic that you can absolutely see in Canada's First Nations, amongst others. Remember that everyone has many of these. So amongst the First Nations, you could also say that there's an ethnic component to that, if they're all descended from the same groups of people. So culture in each of Canada's First Nations are very different because they are extremely diverse. North America, Turtle Island is a big place. We have very different art forms from the Haida in BC as opposed to the Inuit in Nunavut, and art is one of those symbols of culture. So those are two different nations. Just because we say that they're part of the First Nations, Inuit and Métis, doesn't mean that all of the groups that fall under that categorization are actually the same nation. They have their own unique and distinct characteristics.